Paradise Regained by John Milton, with Dennis Quilley as the poet and Ian McDermott as Satan. Episode 3, in which Mary is troubled by Christ's absence and Satan confers with his council.
Meanwhile, the new baptized, who yet remained at Jordan with the Baptist, and had seen him whom they heard so late expressly called Jesus, Messiah, Son of God declared, and on that high authority had believed, and with him talked, and with him lodged, I mean Andrew and Simon, famous after known with others, though in Holy Writ not named, now missing him, their joy so lately found and so abruptly gone, began to doubt, and doubted many days, and as the days increased their doubt. Sometimes they thought he might be only shown, and for a time caught up to God, as once Moses was in the mount, and missing long. Then on the bank of Jordan, by a creek, where winds with reeds and osiers whispering play, plain fishermen, no greater men them call, close in a cottage low together got, their unexpected loss and plaints outbreathed.
Alas, from what high hope, to what relapse unlooked for are we fallen! Our eyes beheld Messiah certainly now come, so long expected of our fathers. We have heard his words, his wisdom full of grace and truth. Now for sure deliverance is at hand. The kingdom shall to Israel be restored. Thus we rejoiced. But soon our joy is turned into perplexity and new amaze. For whither is he gone? What accident hath rapt him from us? Will he now retire after appearance, and again prolong our expectation? God of Israel, send thy Messiah forth, the time is come. Behold the kings of the earth, how they oppress thy chosen. To what height their power unjust they have exalted, and behind them cast all fear of thee. Arise and vindicate thy glory. Free thy people from their yoke.
But let us wait. Thus far he hath performed, sent his anointed, and to us revealed him. By his great prophet pointed at and shown in public, and with him we have conversed. Let us be glad of this, and all our fears lay on his providence. He will not fail, nor will withdraw him now, nor will recall, mock us with his blessed sight, then snatch him hence. Soon we shall see our hope, our joy return.
Thus they, out of their plaints, new hope resume to find whom at the first they found unsought. But to his mother Mary, when she saw others returned from baptism, not her son, nor left at Jordan tidings of him none, within her breast, though calm, her breast though pure, motherly cares and fears got head, and raised some troubled thoughts, which she in sighs thus clad.
Oh, what avails me now that honour high to have conceived of God, or that salute, hail, highly favoured, among women blessed, while I to sorrows am no less advanced, and fears as eminent, above the lot of other women by the birth I bore. In such a season born, when scarce a shed could be obtained to shelter him or me from the bleak air. A stable was our warmth, a manger his. Yet soon enforced to fly thence into Egypt, till the murderous king were dead, who sought his life, and missing, filled with infant blood the streets of Bethlehem. From Egypt home returned, in Nazareth had been our dwelling many years, his life private, unactive, calm, contemplative, little suspicious to any king. But now full grown to man, acknowledged, as I hear, by John the Baptist, and in public shown, son, owned from heaven by his Father's voice, I looked for some great change. To honour? No, but trouble, as old Simeon plain foretold, that to the fall and rising he should be of many in Israel, and to a sign spoken against, that through my very soul a sword shall pierce. This is my favoured lot, my exaltation to afflictions high. Afflicted I may be, it seems, and blessed. I will not argue that, nor will repine. But where delays he now? Some great intent conceals him. When 12 years he scarce had seen, I lost him, but so found, as well I saw, he could not lose himself, but went about his father's business. What he meant, I mused, since understand. Much more his absence now, thus long, to some great purpose he obscures. But I to wait with patience am inured. My heart hath been a storehouse long of things and sayings laid up, portending strange events.
Thus Mary, pondering oft, and oft to mind recalling what remarkably had passed since first her salutation heard, with thoughts meekly composed, awaited the fulfilling. The while her son, tracing the desert wild, soul but with holiest meditations fed, into himself descended, and at once all his great work to come before him set. How to begin, how to accomplish best his end of being on earth and mission high. For Satan, with sly preface to return, had left him vacant, and with speed was gone up to the middle region of thick air, where all his potentates in council sat. There, without sign of boast or sign of joy, solicitous and blank, he thus began.
Princes, heaven's ancient sons, ethereal thrones, Dumonian spirits now, from the element each of his reign allotted, rightly are called powers of fire, air, water, and earth beneath. Such an enemy is risen to invade us, who no less threatens than our expulsion down to hell. I, as I undertook, and with the vote consenting in full frequence was empowered, have found him, viewed him, tasted him, but find far other labour to be undergone than that when I dealt with Adam first of men. Therefore I am returned, lest confidence of my success with Eve in paradise deceive ye to persuasion oversure of like succeeding here. I summon all rather to be in readiness, with hand or counsel to assist, lest I, who erst thought none my equal, now be overmatched.
So spake the old serpent, doubting, and from all with clamour was assured their utmost aid at his command, when from amidst them rose Belial, the dissolutest spirit that fell, the sensualest, and after Asmodai the fleshliest incubus, and thus advised.
Set women in his eye and in his walk. Among daughters of men the fairest found. Many are in each region passing fair as the noon sky, more like to goddesses than mortal creatures, graceful and discreet, expert in amorous arts, enchanting tongues persuasive, virgin majesty with mild and sweet allayed. Yet terrible to approach, skilled to retire, and in retiring draw hearts after them tangled in amorous nets. Such object hath the power to soften and tame severest temper, smooth the ruggedest brow, enerve, and with voluptuous hope dissolve, draw out with credulous desire, and lead at will the manliest, resolutest breast, as the magnetic, hardest iron draws. Women, when nothing else, beguiled the heart of wisest Solomon, and made him build, and made him bow to the gods of his wives.
Belial, in much uneven scale thou weighst all others by thyself. Because of old thou thyself dot'st on womankind, admiring their shape, their colour, and attractive grace, none are, thou think'st, but taken with such toys. Before the flood, thou with thy lusty crew, false-titled sons of God, roaming the earth, cast wanton eyes on the daughters of men, and coupled with them, and begot a race. Have we not seen, or by relation heard, in courts and regal chambers, how thou lurk'st, in wood or grove, by mossy fountain-side, in valley or green meadow, to waylay some beauty rare, Callisto, Clymene, Daphne, or Semele, Antiopa, or Amymone, Syrinx, many more too long. Then lay'st thy scapes on names adored, Apollo, Neptune, Jupiter, or Pan, Satyr, or Faun, or Sylvan. But these haunts delight not all. Among the sons of men, how many have, with a smile, made small account of beauty and her lures, easily scorned all her assaults, on worthier things intent. For Solomon, he lived at ease, and full of honour, wealth, high fare, aimed not beyond higher design than to enjoy his state. Thence to the bait of women lay exposed. But he whom we attempt is wiser far than Solomon, of more exalted mind, made and set wholly on the accomplishment of greatest things. What woman will you find, though of this age the wonder and the fame, on whom his leisure will vouchsafe an eye of fond desire? Or should she, confident as sitting queen adored on beauty's throne, descend with all her winning charms begirt to enamour, as the zone of Venus once wrought that effect on Jove, so fables tell, how would one look from his majestic brow, seated as on the top of virtue's hill, discountenance her despised, and put to rout all her array, her female pride deject, or turn to reverent awe? For beauty stands in the admiration only of weak minds led captive. Cease to admire, and all her plumes fall flat, and shrink into a trivial toy, at every sudden slighting quite abashed. Therefore, with manlier objects we must try his constancy, with such as have more show of worth, of honour, glory, and popular praise, rocks whereon greatest men have oftest wrecked, or that which only seems to satisfy lawful desires of nature, not beyond. And now I know he hungers where no food is to be found in the wide wilderness. The rest commit to me. I shall let pass no advantage, and his strength as oft assay.
He ceased, and heard their grant in loud acclaim. Then forthwith to him takes a chosen band of spirits likest to himself in guile, to be at hand and at his beck appear, if cause were, to unfold some active scene of various persons, each to know his part. Then to the desert takes with these his flight, where still from shade to shade the Son of God, after 40 days' fasting, had remained.
In the third episode of Paradise Regained, the readers were Matthew Morgan, Julian Ryan-Tutt, Federe Holmes, Ian McDermott, and Steve Hodgson. The narrator was Dennis Quilley. Paradise Regained by John Milton, with Ian McDermott as Satan and Robert Glenister as Christ. Episode 4, in which Satan tries to tempt Christ in the wilderness, first with a banquet, then with wealth and power.
Now to the desert Satan takes his flight, where still from shade to shade the Son of God after 40 days' fasting had remained, now hungering first, and to himself thus said,
Where will this end? 4 times 10 days I have passed wandering this woody maze, and human food nor tasted, nor had appetite. That fast to virtue I impute not, or count part of what I suffer here. If nature need not, or God support nature without repast though needing, what praise is it to endure? But now I feel I hunger, which declares nature hath need of what she asks. Yet God can satisfy that need some other way, though hunger still remain. So it remain without this body's wasting. I content me, and from the sting of famine fear no harm, nor mind it, fed with better thoughts that feed me hungering more to do my Father's will.
It was the hour of night when thus the son communed in silent walk, then laid him down under the hospitable covert nigh of trees thick interwoven. There he slept, and dreamed, as appetite is wont to dream, of meats and drinks, nature's refreshment sweet. Him thought he by the brook of Cherith stood, and saw the ravens with their horny beaks food to Elijah bringing, eve and morn, though ravenous, taught to abstain from what they brought. He saw the prophet also, how he fled into the desert, and how there he slept under a juniper. Then how, awaked, he found his supper on the coals prepared, and by the angel was bid rise and eat the second time after repose, the strength whereof sufficed him 40 days. Thus wore out night, and now the herald lark left his ground nest, high towering to descry the morn's approach, and greet her with his song. As lightly from his grassy couch uprose our Saviour, and found all was but a dream. Fasting he went to sleep, and fasting waked. Up to a hill anon his steps he reared, from whose high top to ken the prospect round, if cottage were in view, sheepcot or herd. But cottage, herd, or sheepcot none he saw. Only in a bottom saw a pleasant grove, with chant of tuneful birds resounding loud. Thither he bent his way, determined there to rest at noon, and entered soon the shade, high-roofed, and walks beneath, and alleys brown that opened in the midst a woody scene. Nature's own work it seemed. Nature taught art, and to a superstitious eye the haunt of wood gods and wood nymphs. He viewed it round, when suddenly a man before him stood, not rustic as before, but seemlier clad, as one in city or court or palace bred, and with fair speech these words to him addressed.
With granted leave, officious, I return, but much more wonder that the Son of God in this wild solitude so long should bide, of all things destitute, and well I know, not without hunger. Others of some note, as story tells, have trod this wilderness, for Israel here had famished, had not God rained from heaven manna, and that prophet bold, native of Thebes, wandering here, was fed twice by a voice inviting him to eat. Of thee, these 40 days, none hath regard. 40, and more deserted here indeed.
Israel had need, I, as thou seest, have none.
Tell me, if food were now before thee set, wouldst thou not eat?
Thereafter, as I like the giver.
Why should that cause thy refusal? Behold, nature ashamed, or better to express, troubled that thou shouldst hunger, hath purveyed from all the elements her choicest store, to treat thee as beseems, and as her lord, with honour, only deign to sit and eat.
He spake no dream, for as his words had end, our Saviour, lifting up his eyes, beheld in ample space under the broadest shade a table richly spread, in regal mode, with dishes piled, and meats of noblest sort and savour, beasts of chase or fowl of game, in pastry built, or from the spit, or boiled, grisamber steamed, all fish, from sea or shore, freshet or purling brook, of shell or fin, and exquisitest name, for which was drained Pontus and Lucrine Bay and Afric coast. Alas, how simple, to these cates compared, was that crude apple that diverted Eve! And at a stately sideboard, by the wine that fragrant smell diffused, in order stood tall stripling youths, rich clad, of fairer hue than Ganymede or Hylas. Distant more under the trees, now tripped, now solemn stood, nymphs of Diana's train, and Naiades with fruits and flowers from Amalthea's horn. And all the while harmonious airs were heard of charming strings, or charming pipes and winds of gentlest gale, Arabian odours fanned from their soft wings, and Flora's earliest smells. Such was the splendour, and the tempter now his invitation earnestly renewed.
What doubts the Son of God to sit and eat? These are not fruits forbidden. No interdict defends the touching of these viands pure. Their taste no knowledge works, at least of evil, but life preserves, destroys life's enemy, hunger, with sweet restorative delight. All these are spirits of air and woods and springs, thy gentle ministers, who come to pay thee homage and acknowledge thee their Lord. What doubt'st thou, Son of God? Sit down and eat.
Saidst thou not that to all things I had right? And who withholds my power that right to use? Shall I receive by gift what of my own, when and where likes me best, I can command? I can at will, doubt not, as soon as thou, command a table in this wilderness, and call swift flights of angels ministrant arrayed in glory on my cup to attend. Why shouldst thou then obtrude this diligence in vain, where no acceptance it can find? And with my hunger what hast thou to do? Thy pompous delicacies I contemn, and count thy specious gifts no gifts, but guiles.
That I have also power to give, thou seest. If of that power I bring thee voluntary what I might have bestowed on whom I pleased, and rather opportunely in this place chose to impart to thy apparent need, why shouldst thou not accept it? But I see what I can do or offer is suspect. Of these things others quickly will dispose, whose pains have earned the far-fet spoil.
With that, both table and provision vanished quite, with sound of harpies' wings and talons heard. Only the importune tempter still remained, and with these words his temptation pursued.
By hunger, that each other creature tames, thou art not to be harmed, therefore not moved. Thy temperance invincible besides, for no allurement yields to appetite, and all thy heart is set on high designs, high actions. But wherewith to be achieved, great acts require great means of enterprise. Thou art unknown, unfriended, low of birth, a carpenter thy father known, thyself bred up in poverty and straits at home, lost in a desert here, and hunger bit. Which way, and from what hope, dost thou aspire to greatness? Whence authority derivest? What followers? What retinue canst thou gain? Or at thy heels the dizzy multitude, longer than thou canst feed them on thy cost? Money brings honour, friends, conquest, and realms. Therefore, if at great things thou wouldst arrive, get riches first, get wealth, and treasure heap. Not difficult if thou hearken to me. Riches are mine, fortune is in my hand. They whom I favour thrive in wealth amain, while virtue, valour, wisdom sit in want.
Yet wealth without these three is impotent, to gain dominion or to keep it gained. Witness those ancient empires of the earth, in height of all their flowing wealth, dissolved. But men endued with these have oft attained in lowest poverty to highest deeds. Gideon and Jephthah, and the shepherd lad whose offspring on the throne of Judah sat so many ages, and shall yet regain that seat, and reign in Israel without end. Among the heathen, for throughout the world to me is not unknown what hath been done worthy of memorial, canst thou not remember Quintius, Fabricius, Curius, Regulus? For I esteem those names of men so poor, who could do mighty things, and could contemn riches, though offered from the hand of kings. And what in me seems wanting, but that I may also in this poverty as soon accomplish what they did, perhaps and more? Extol not riches then, the toil of fools, the wise man's cumbrance if not snare, more apt to slacken virtue and abate her edge than prompt her to do aught may merit praise. What if with like aversion I reject riches and realms, yet not for that a crown golden in show is but a wreath of thorns, brings dangers, troubles, cares, and sleepless nights to him who wears the regal diadem, when on his shoulders each man's burden lies. For therein stands the office of a king, his honour, virtue, merit, and chief praise, that for the public all this weight he bears. Yet he who reigns within himself, and rules passions, desires, and fears, is more a king, which every wise and virtuous man attains, and who attains not, ill aspires to rule cities of men or headstrong multitudes, subject himself to anarchy within, or lawless passions in him which he serves. But to guide nations in the way of truth by saving doctrine, and from error lead to know, and knowing worship God aright, is yet more kingly. This attracts the soul, governs the inner man, the nobler part. That other o'er the body only reigns, and oft by force, which to a generous mind so reigning can be no sincere delight. Besides, to give a kingdom hath been thought greater and nobler done, and to lay down far more magnanimous than to assume. Riches are needless then, both for themselves and for thy reason why they should be sought. To gain a sceptre, oftest better missed.
In the fourth episode of Paradise Regained, Robert Glenister was the Son of God, and Ian McDiarmid Satan. The narrator was Dennis Quilley. Paradise Regained was abridged in 9 parts by Adrian Mitchell, and the music was by Elizabeth Parker. The director was John Theocaris. Paradise Regained by John Milton, abridged by Adrian Mitchell, with Ian McDiarmid as Satan and Robert Glenister as Christ. Episode 5, in which Satan reminds Christ that the kingdom of David is under the Roman yoke, and suggests that he should free it.
To give a kingdom hath been thought greater and nobler done, and to lay down far more magnanimous than to assume.
So spake the Son of God. And Satan stood a while as mute, confounded what to say, what to reply, confuted and convinced of his weak arguing and fallacious drift. At length, collecting all his serpent wiles, with soothing words renewed, him thus accosts.
I see thou knowest what is of use to know, what best to say, to do canst do. Thy actions to thy words accord, thy words to thy large heart give utterance due. Thy heart contains of good, wise, just, the perfect shape. Should kings and nations from thy mouth consult, thy counsel would be as the oracle Urim and Thummim, those oraculous gems on Aaron's breast. Or tongue of seers old infallible, or, wert thou sought to deeds that might require the array of war, thy skill of conduct would be such that all the world could not sustain thy prowess, or subsist in battle, though against thy few in arms. These godlike virtues, wherefore dost thou hide? Affecting private life, or more obscure in savage wilderness, wherefore deprive all earth her wonder at thy acts, thyself the fame and glory? Glory, the reward that soul excites to high attempts, the flame of most erected spirits, most tempered, pure, ethereal, who all pleasures else despise, all treasures and all gain esteem as dross, and dignities and powers all but the highest. Thy years are ripe, and overripe. The son of Macedonian Philip had ere these won Asia, and the throne of Cyrus held at his dispose. Young Scipio had brought down the Carthaginian pride, young Pompey quelled the Pontic king, and in triumph had rode. Yet years, and to ripe years judgment mature, quench not the thirst of glory, but augment. Great Julius, whom now all the world admires, the more he grew in years, the more inflamed with glory, wept that he had lived so long inglorious. But thou yet art not too late.
To whom our Saviour calmly thus replied,
Thou neither dost persuade me to seek wealth for empire's sake, nor empire to effect for glory's sake by all thy argument. For what is glory but the blaze of fame, the people's praise, if always praise unmixed? And what the people but a herd confused, a miscellaneous rabble who extol things vulgar and well-weighed, scarce worth the praise. They praise and they admire they know not what, and know not whom, but as one leads the other. And what delight to be by such extolled, to live upon their tongues and be their talk, of whom to be dispraised were no small praise. His lot who dares be singularly good. The intelligent among them and the wise are few, and glory scarce of few is raised. This is true glory and renown, when God, looking on the earth, with approbation marks the just man, and divulges him through heaven to all his angels, who with true applause recount his praises. Thus he did to Job, when to extend his fame through heaven and earth, as thou to thy reproach mayst well remember, he asked thee, Hast thou seen my servant Job? Famous he was in heaven, on earth less known. Where glory is false glory, attributed to things not glorious, men not worthy of fame. They err who count it glorious to subdue by conquest far and wide, to overrun large countries and in field great battles win, great cities by assault. What do these worthies but rob and spoil, burn, slaughter, and enslave peaceable nations, neighbouring or remote, made captive, yet deserving freedom more than those their conquerors, who leave behind nothing but ruin wheresoe'er they rove, and all the flourishing works of peace destroy? Then swell with pride, and must be titled gods, great benefactors of mankind, deliverers, worshipped with temple, priest, and sacrifice. One is the son of Jove, of Mars the other, till conqueror death discover them scarce men, rolling in brutish vices, and deformed, violent or shameful death their due reward. But if there be in glory aught of good, it may by means far different be attained without ambition, war, or violence, by deeds of peace, by wisdom eminent, by patience, temperance. I mention still him whom thy wrongs with saintly patience borne made famous in a land and times obscure. Who names not now with honour patient Job? Poor Socrates, who next more memorable? By what he taught and suffered for so doing, for truth's sake suffering death unjust, lives now, equal in fame to proudest conquerors. Yet if for fame and glory aught be done, aught suffered, if young African for fame his wasted country free from Punic rage, the deed becomes unpraised, the man at least, and loses, though but verbal, his reward. Shall I seek glory then, as vain men seek oft not deserved? I seek not mine, but his who sent me, and thereby witness whence I am.
Think not so slight of glory. Therein least resembling thy great father, he seeks glory, and for his glory all things made. All things orders and governs, nor content in heaven by all his angels glorified, requires glory from men, from all men, good or bad, wise or unwise, no difference, no exemption. Above all sacrifice or hallowed gift, glory he requires, and glory he receives, promiscuous from all nations, Jew or Greek or barbarous, nor exception hath declared. From us, his foes pronounced, glory he exacts.
And reason, since his word all things produced, though chiefly not for glory as prime end, but to show forth his goodness, and impart his good communicable to every soul freely. Of whom what could he less expect than glory and benediction? That is thanks, the slightest, easiest, readiest recompense from them who could return him nothing else. And not returning that, would likeliest render contempt instead, dishonour, obloquy. Hard recompense, unsuitable return for so much good, so much beneficence. But why should man seek glory, who of his own hath nothing, and to whom nothing belongs but condemnation, ignominy, and shame? Who for so many benefits received turned recreant to God, ingrate and false, and so of all true good himself despoiled, yet sacrilegious to himself would take that which to God alone of right belongs. Yet so much bounty is in God, such grace, that who advance his glory, not their own, them he himself to glory will advance.
So spake the Son of God. And here again Satan had not to answer, but stood struck with guilt of his own sin, for he himself, insatiable of glory, had lost all. Yet of another plea bethought him soon.
Of glory as thou wilt, I grant, so deem, worth or not worth the seeking, let it pass. But to a kingdom thou art born, ordained to sit upon thy father David's throne. By mother's side thy father, though thy right be now in powerful hands, that will not part easily from possession won with arms. Judea now, and all the promised land, reduced a province under Roman yoke, obeys Tiberius, nor is always ruled with temperate sway. Oft have they violated the temple, oft the law with foul affronts, abominations rather, as did once Antiochus. And think'st thou to regain thy right by sitting still, or thus retiring? So did not Maccabeus. He indeed retired unto the desert, but with arms, and o'er a mighty king so oft prevailed. If kingdom move thee not, let move thee zeal and duty. Zeal and duty are not slow, but on occasion's forelock watchful wait. They themselves, rather, are occasion best. Zeal of thy father's house, duty to free thy country from her heathen servitude. So shalt thou best fulfill, best verify the prophets old, who sung thy endless reign. The happier reign, the sooner it begins. Reign then. What canst thou better do the while?
All things are best fulfilled in their due time, and time there is for all things. Truth has said, if of my reign prophetic writ hath told that it shall never end, so when begin the Father in his purpose hath decreed, he in whose hand all times and seasons roll. What if he hath decreed that I shall first be tried in humble state, and things adverse, by tribulations, injuries, insults, contempts and scorns, and snares and violence, suffering, abstaining, quietly expecting without distrust or doubt, that he may know what I can suffer, how obey? Who best can suffer, best can do, best reign who first well hath obeyed. Just trial ere I merit my exaltation without change or end. But what concerns it thee when I begin my everlasting kingdom? Why art thou solicitous? What moves thy inquisition? Know'st thou not that my rising is thy fall, and my promotion will be thy destruction?
Let that come when it comes. All hope is lost of my reception into grace. What worse? For where no hope is left no fear. If there be worse, the expectation more of worse torments me than the feeling can. I would be at the worst. Worst is my port, my harbour, and my ultimate repose, the end I would attain, my final good. My error was my error, and my crime, whatever for itself condemned, and will alike be punished, whether thou reign or reign not. Though to that gentle brow willingly I could fly, and hope thy reign from that placid aspect and meek regard, rather than aggravate my evil state, would stand between me and thy father's ire, whose ire I dread more than the fire of hell, a shelter, and a kind of shading, cool interposition, as a summer's cloud.
In the 5th episode of Paradise Regained, Robert Glenister was the Son of God, and Ian McDiarmid, Satan. The narrator was Dennis Quilley. Paradise Regained by John Milton, with Ian McDiarmid as Satan and Robert Glenister as Christ. Episode 6, in which Satan takes Christ to a high mountain, shows him the kingdoms of the earth, and suggests that he should liberate the Jews then in captivity.
Why move thy feet so slow to what is best? Happiest both to thyself and all the world, that thou who worthiest art shouldst be their king. Perhaps thou lingerst in deep thoughts detained of the enterprise so hazardous and high. No wonder. For though in thee be united what of perfection can in man be found, or human nature can receive, consider thy life hath yet been private, most part spent at home, scarce viewed the Galilean towns, and once a year Jerusalem, few days short sojourn, and what thence couldst thou observe? The world thou hast not seen, much less her glory, empires and their monarchs and their radiant courts, best school of best experience, quickest in sight in all things that to greatest actions lead. The wisest, unexperienced, will be ever timorous and loath, with novice modesty, as he who seeking asses found a kingdom. Irresolute, unhardy, unadventurous. But I will bring thee where thou soon shalt quit those rudiments, and see before thine eyes the monarchies of the earth, their pomp and state, sufficient introduction to inform thee of thyself so apt in regal arts and regal mysteries, that thou mayst know how best their opposition to withstand.
With that, such power was given him then, he took the Son of God up to a mountain high. It was a mountain at whose verdant feet a spacious plain, outstretched in circuit wide, lay pleasant. From his side 2 rivers flowed, the one winding, the other straight, and left between a fair champaign, with less rivers intervened. Then meeting, joined their tribute to the sea. Fertile of corn the glebe, of oil and wine, with herds the pastures thronged, with flocks the hills, huge cities and high-towered, that well might seem the seats of mightiest monarchs, and so large the prospect was, that here and there was room for barren desert, fountainless and dry. To this high mountain-top the tempter brought our Saviour, and new train of words began.
Well have we speeded, and o'er hill and dale, forest and field, and flood, temples and towers, cut shorter many a league. Here thou beholdst Assyria and her empire's ancient bounds, Araxes and the Caspian lake, thence on as far as Indus east, Euphrates west, and off beyond. To south, the Persian bay, and inaccessible the Arabian drought. Here Nineveh, of length within her walls several days' journey, built by Ninus old, of that first golden monarchy, the seat, and seat of Salmanassar, whose success Israel in long captivity still mourns. There Babylon, the wonder of all tongues, as ancient, but rebuilt by him who twice Judah and all thy father David's house led captive, and Jerusalem laid waste, till Cyrus set them free. Persepolis, his city, there thou seest, and Bactra there. Ecbatana, her structure vast there shows, and Hecatompylos, her 100 gates. There Susa by Coaspi's amber stream, the drink of none but kings, of later fame built by Emathian, or by Parthian hands, the great Seleucia, Nisibis, and there Artaxata, Teridon, Ctesiphon, turning with easy eye thou mayst behold. All these the Parthian, Now, some ages past, by great Arsaces led, who founded first that empire, under his dominion holds from the luxurious kings of Antioch one. And just in time thou comes to have a view of his great power, for now the Parthian king in Ctesiphon hath gathered all his host against the Scythian, whose incursions wild have wasted Sogdiana. To her aid he marches now in haste. See, though from far his thousands, in what martial equipage they issue forth, steel bows and shafts, their arms of equal dread in flight or in pursuit, all horsemen, in which fight they most excel. See how in warlike muster they appear, in rhombs and wedges and half-moons and wings.
He looked, and saw what numbers numberless the city gates outpoured, light-armed troops in coats of mail and military pride, in mail their horses clad, yet fleet and strong, prancing their riders bore, the flower and choice of many provinces from bound to bound, from Arachosia, from Candor east and Margiana to the Hyrcanian cliffs of Caucasus and dark Iberian dales, from Atropatia and the neighbouring plains of Adiabene, Media, and the south of Susiana to Balsara's haven. He saw them in their forms of battle ranged, how quick they wheeled, and flying behind them shot sharp sleet of arrowy showers against the face of their pursuers, and overcame by flight. The field, all iron, cast a gleaming brown, nor wanted clouds of foot, nor on each horn cuirassiers, all in steel for standing fight, chariots or elephants endorsed with towers of archers, nor of labouring pioneers a multitude, with spades and axes armed, to lay hills plain, fell woods or valleys fill, or where plain was, raise hill, or overlay with bridges rivers proud, as with a yoke. Mules after these, camels and dromedaries, and wagons fraught with utensils of war. Such forces met not, nor so wide a camp, when Agrican with all his northern powers besieged Albracca, as romances tell. Such and so numerous was their chivalry, at sight whereof the fiend yet more presumed, and to our Saviour thus his words renewed.
That thou mayst know I seek not to engage thy virtue, and not every way secure, on no slight grounds, thy safety, hear and mark to what end I have brought thee hither, and shown all this fair sight. Thy kingdom, though foretold by prophet or by angel, unless thou endeavour, as thy father David did, thou never shalt obtain. Prediction still in all things and all men supposes means. Without means used, what it predicts revokes. But say thou wert possessed of David's throne, by free consent of all, none opposite, Samaritan or Jew, how couldst thou hope long to enjoy it quiet and secure, between two such enclosing enemies, Roman and Parthian? Therefore, one of these thou must make sure thy own, the Parthian first, by my advice, as Nera and of late found able by invasion to annoy thy country, and captive lead away her kings, Antigonus and old Hyrcanus bound, Morga the Roman. It shall be my task to render thee the Parthian at dispose. Choose which thou wilt, by conquest or by league, by him thou shalt regain, without him not, that which alone can truly reinstall thee in David's royal seat, his true successor, deliverance of thy brethren, those 10 tribes whose offspring in his territory yet serve, in harbour and among the Medes dispersed, 10 sons of Jacob, 2 of Joseph lost thus long from Israel, serving, as of old their fathers in the land of Egypt served. This offer sets before thee to deliver. These, if from servitude thou shalt restore to their inheritance, then, nor till then, thou on the throne of David in full glory, from Egypt to Euphrates and beyond, shalt reign, and Rome or Caesar not need fear.
Much ostentation vain of fleshly arm and fragile arms, much instrument of war long in preparing, soon to nothing brought. Before mine eyes thou hast set, and in my ear vented much policy, and projects deep of enemies, of aids, battles, and leagues, plausible to the world, to me, worth naught. Means I must use, thou sayest. Prediction else will unpredict and fail me of the throne. My time, I told thee, and that time for thee were better farthest off, is not yet come. When that comes, think not thou to find me slack on my part aught endeavouring, or to need thy politic maxims, or that cumbersome luggage of war there shown me, argument of human weakness rather than of strength. My brethren, as thou call'st them, those 10 tribes I must deliver, if I mean to reign, David's true heir, and his full sceptre sway to just extent over all Israel's sons. But whence to thee this zeal? Where was it then for Israel or for David or his throne, when thou stoodst up his tempter to the pride of numbering Israel, which cost the lives of 70,010 Israelites by 3 days' pestilence? Such was thy zeal to Israel then, the same that now to me. As for those captive tribes, themselves were they who wrought their own captivity, fell off from God to worship calves, the deities of Egypt, Baal next, and Ashtaroth, and all the idolatries of heathen round, besides their other worse than heathenish crimes. Nor in the land of their captivity humbled themselves, or penitent besought the God of their forefathers, but so died impenitent, and left a race behind like to themselves, distinguishable scarce from Gentiles, but by circumcision vain, and God with idols in their worship joined. Should I of these the liberty regard, who, freed as to their ancient patrimony, unhumbled, unrepentant, unreformed, headlong would follow, and to their gods perhaps of Bethel and of Dan? No. Let them serve their enemies, who serve idols with God. Yet he, at length, time to himself best known, remembering Abraham by some wondrous call, may bring them back repentant and sincere, and at their passing cleave the Assyrian flood, while to their native land with joy they haste, as the Red Sea and Jordan once he cleft, when to the promised land their fathers passed. To his due time and providence I leave them.
So spake Israel's true king, and to the fiend made answer meet, that made void all his wiles. So fares it when with truth falsehood contends.
In the 6th episode of Paradise Regained, Robert Glenister was the Son of God, and Ian McDiarmid, Satan. The narrator was Dennis Quilly. Paradise Regained by John Milton, with Ian McDiarmid as Satan and Robert Glenister as Christ. Episode 7, in which Satan shows Christ the city of Rome, and urges him to expel its wicked emperor.
Perplexed and troubled at his bad success the tempter stood, nor had what to reply, discovered in his fraud, thrown from his hope so oft, and the persuasive rhetoric that sleeked his tongue, and won so much on Eve, so little here, nay lost. But Eve was Eve, this far his overmatch, who, self-deceived and rash, beforehand had no better weighed the strength he was to cope with, or his own. But as a man who had been matchless held in cunning, overreached where least he thought to salve his credit, and for very spite still will be tempting him who foils him still, and never cease, though to his shame the more. Or as a swarm of flies in vintage time, about the wine-press where sweet must is poured, beat off, returns as oft with humming sound. Or surging waves against the solid rock, though all to shivers dashed, the assault renew, vain battery, and in froth or bubbles end. So Satan, whom repulse upon repulse met ever, and to shameful silence brought, yet gives not o'er, though desperate of success, and his vain importunity pursues. He brought our Saviour to the western side of that high mountain, whence he might behold another plain, long, but in breadth not wide, washed by the southern sea, and on the north to equal length backed with a ridge of hills, that screened the fruits of the earth and seats of men from cold septentrian blasts. Thence in the midst divided by a river, of whose banks on each side an imperial city stood, with towers and temples proudly elevate on 7 small hills, with palaces adorned, porches and theatres, baths, aqueducts, statues and trophies, and triumphal arcs, gardens and groves, presented to his eyes above the height of mountains interposed. By what strange parallax or optic skill of vision, multiplied through air or glass of telescope, were curious to inquire. And now the tempter thus his silence broke.
The city which thou seest no other deem than great and glorious Rome, queen of the earth, so far renowned, and with the spoils enriched of nations. There the Capitol thou seest, above the rest, lifting his stately head on the Tarpeian rock, her citadel impregnable, and there Mount Palatine, the imperial palace, compass huge and high the structure, skill of noblest architects, with gilded battlements, conspicuous far turrets and terraces and glittering spires. Many a fair edifice besides, more like houses of gods. So well I have disposed my airy microscope, thou mayst behold outside and inside both, pillars and roofs, carved work, the hand of famed artificers, in cedar, marble, ivory, or gold. Thence to the gates cast round thine eye, and see what conflux, issuing forth or entering in, praetors, proconsuls to their provinces hasting or on return, in robes of state, lictors and rods, the ensigns of their power, legions and cohorts, terms of horse and wings, or embassies from regions far remote, in various habits on the Appian road, or on the Emilian, some from farthest south, from India and the golden Chersonese, and utmost Indian isle Taprobene, dusk faces with white silken turbants wreathed. From Gallia, Gades and the British West, Germans and Scythians and Sarmatians north, beyond Danubius to the Tauric pool. All nations now to Rome obedience pay, to Rome's great emperor, whose wide domain, in ample territory, wealth and power, civility of manners, arts and arms, and long renown, thou justly mayst prefer before the Parthian. These 2 thrones except, the rest are barbarous and scarce worth the sight, shared among petty kings too far removed. These having shown thee, I have shown thee all the kingdoms of the world and all their glory. This emperor hath no son, and now is old and lascivious, and from Rome retired to Capri, an island small but strong on the Campanian shore, with purpose there his horrid lusts in private to enjoy, committing to a wicked favourite all public cares, and yet of him suspicious, hated of all, and hating. With what ease, endued with regal virtues as thou art, appearing and beginning noble deeds, mightst thou expel this monster from his throne, now made a sty, and in his place ascending a victor people free from servile yoke. And with my help thou mayst. To me the power is given, and by that right I give it thee. Aim therefore at no less than all the world. Aim at the highest. Without the highest attained, will be for thee no sitting, or not long, on David's throne, be prophesied what will.
Nor doth this grandeur and majestic show of luxury, though called magnificence, more than of arms before, allure mine eye, much less my mind. Though thou shouldst add to tell their sumptuous gluttonies and gorgeous feasts on citron tables or Atlantic stone, for I have also heard, perhaps have read, their wines of Setia, Cales and Falern, Chios and Crete, and how they quaff in gold, crystal and murrhine cups embossed with gems and studs of pearl. To me shouldst tell who thirst and hunger still? Then embassies thou showest from nations far and nigh. What honour that? But tedious waste of time to sit and hear so many hollow compliments and lies, outlandish flatteries. Then proceedest to talk of the emperor, how easily subdued, how gloriously. I shall, thou sayest, expel a brutish monster. What if I withal expel a devil who first made him such? Let his tormentor conscience find him out. For him I was not sent, nor yet to free that people victor once, now vile and base, deservedly made vassal, who once just, frugal and mild, and temperate, conquered well, but govern ill the nations under yoke, peeling their provinces, exhausted all by lust and rapine, first ambitious, grown of triumph, that insulting vanity, then cruel, by their sports to blood inured of fighting beasts, and men to beasts exposed, luxurious by their wealth, and greedier still, and from the daily scene effeminate. What wise and valiant man would seek to free these thus degenerate, by themselves enslaved, or could of inward slaves make outward free? Know, therefore, when my season comes to sit on David's throne, it shall be like a tree spreading and overshadowing all the earth, or as a stone that shall to pieces dash all monarchies besides throughout the world. And of my kingdom there shall be no end. Means there shall be to this, but what the means is not for thee to know, nor me to tell.
I see all offers made by me how slight thou valuest, because offered, and rejectst. Nothing will please the difficult and nice, or nothing more than still to contradict. On the other side, know also thou that I on what I offer set as high esteem, nor what I part with mean to give for naught. All these, which in a moment thou beholdst, the kingdoms of the world to thee I give, for given to me I give to whom I please, no trifle. Yet with this reserve, not else, on this condition, if thou wilt fall down and worship me as thy superior lord, easily done, and hold them all of me. For what can less so great a gift deserve?
I never liked thy talk, thy offers less, now both abhor, since thou hast dared to utter the abominable terms, impious condition. But I endure the time till which expired thou hast permission on me. It is written the first of all commandments, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and only him shalt serve. And darest thou to the Son of God propound to worship thee accursed, now more accursed for this attempt bolder than that on Eve, and more blasphemous, which expect to rue. The kingdoms of the world to thee were given, permitted rather, and by thee usurped. Other donation none thou canst produce. If given, by whom but by the King of kings, God over all supreme? If given to thee, by thee, how fairly is the giver now repaid? But gratitude in thee is lost long since. Wert thou so void of fear or shame as offer them to me, the Son of God, to me my own, on such abhorred pact, that I fall down and worship thee as God? Get thee behind me. Plain thou now appearest, that evil one, Satan for ever damned.
Be not so sore offended, Son of God, though sons of God both angels are and men, if I, to try whether in higher sort than these thou bear'st that title, have proposed what both from men and angels I receive, tetrarchs of fire, air, flood, and on the earth nations besides from all the quartered winds, God of this world invoked and world beneath. Who then thou art, whose coming is foretold to me so fatal, me it most concerns. The trial hath in damage thee no way. Rather, more honour left and more esteem. Me naught advantaged, missing what I aimed. Therefore let pass, as they are transitory, the kingdoms of this world. I shall no more advise thee, gain them as thou canst or not.
In the 7th episode of Paradise Regained, Robert Glenister was the Son of God, and Ian McDiarmid, Satan. The narrator was Dennis Quilly. Paradise Regained by John Milton, with Ian McDiarmid as Satan and Robert Glenister as Christ. Episode 8, in which Satan shows Christ the city of Athens, with her poets, orators, and philosophers.
We shall let pass, as they are transitory, the kingdoms of this world. I shall no more advise thee, gain them as thou canst or not. And thou thyself seemst otherwise inclined than to a worldly crown, addicted more to contemplation and profound dispute, as by that early action may be judged, when, slipping from thy mother's eye, thou wentst alone into the temple. There was found among the gravest rabbis disputant on points and questions fitting Moses' chair, teaching, not taught. The childhood shows the man as morning shows the day. Be famous, then, by wisdom. As thy empire must extend, so let extend thy mind, or all the world in knowledge. All things in it comprehend. All knowledge is not couched in Moses' law, the Pentateuch, or what the prophets wrote. The Gentiles also know, and write, and teach, to admiration, led by nature's light. And with the Gentiles much thou must converse, ruling them by persuasion, as thou meanst. Without their learning, how wilt thou with them, or they with thee, hold conversation meet? How wilt thou reason with them, how refute their idolisms, traditions, paradoxes? Error by his own arms is best evinced. Look once more, ere we leave this specular mount, westward, much nearer by southwest. Behold, where on the Aegean shore a city stands, built nobly, pure the air and light the soil. Athens, the eye of Greece, mother of arts and eloquence, native to famous wits, or hospitable, in her sweet recess, city or suburban, studious walks and shades. See there the olive grove of Academe, Plato's retirement, where the Attic bird trills her thick warbled notes the summer long. There flowery hill Hymettus, with a sound of bees' industrious murmur, oft invites to studious musing. There Ilyssus rolls his whispering stream. Within the walls then view the schools of ancient sages, his who bred great Alexander to subdue the world. Lyceum there, and painted Stoa next. There thou shalt hear and learn the secret power of harmony in tones and numbers hit by voice or hand, and various measured verse, Aeolian charms and Dorian lyric odes, and his who gave them breath, but higher sung, blind Melesigenes, thence Homer called, whose poem Phoebus challenged for his own. Thence what the lofty grave tragedians taught in chorus or iambic, teachers best of moral prudence, with delight received in brief sententious precepts, while they treat of fate and chance and change in human life, high actions and high passions best describing. Thence to the famous orators repair, those ancient whose resistless eloquence wielded at will that fierce democracy, shook the arsenal and fulmined over Greece, to Macedon and Artaxerxes' throne. To sage philosophy next lend thine ear, from heaven descended to the low-roofed house of Socrates. See there his tenement, whom well inspired the oracle pronounced wisest of men, from whose mouth issued forth mellifluous streams that watered all the schools of academics old and new, with those surnamed Peripatetics, and the sect Epicurean, and the Stoic severe. These here revolve, or as thou likest, at home, till time mature thee to a kingdom's weight. These rules will render thee a king, complete within thyself, much more with empire joined.
Think not but that I know these things, or think I know them not. Not therefore am I short of knowing what I ought. He who receives light from above, from the fountain of light, no other doctrine needs, though granted true. But these are false, or little else but dreams, conjectures, fancies, built on nothing firm. The first and wisest of them all professed to know this only, that he nothing knew. The next to fabling fell and smooth conceits. The third sort doubted all things, though plain sense. Others in virtue placed felicity, but virtue joined with riches and long life. In corporal pleasure he and careless ease. The Stoic last in philosophic pride, by him called virtue, and his virtuous man, wise, perfect in himself and all-possessing, equal to God, oft shames not to prefer, as fearing God nor man, condemning all wealth, pleasure, pain or torment, death and life, which when he lists he leaves, or boasts he can. For all his tedious talk is but vain boast, or subtle shifts conviction to evade. Alas, what can they teach and not mislead? Ignorant of themselves, of God much more, and how the world began, and how man fell degraded by himself, on grace depending. Much of the soul they talk, but all awry, and in themselves seek virtue, and to themselves all glory arrogate. To God give none, rather accuse him under usual names, fortune and fate, as one regardless quite of mortal things. Who therefore seeks in these true wisdom finds her not, or by delusion far worse her false resemblance only meets an empty cloud. However many books wise men have said are wearisome, who reads incessantly, and to his reading brings not a spirit and judgment equal or superior, and what he brings, what needs he elsewhere seek? Uncertain and unsettled still remains, deep versed in books and shallow in himself, crude or intoxicate, collecting toys and trifles for choice matters worth a sponge, as children gathering pebbles on the shore. Or if I would delight my private hours with music or with poem, where so soon as in our native language can I find that solace? All our lore and story strewed with hymns, our psalms with artful terms inscribed, our Hebrew songs and harps in Babylon, that pleased so well our victor's ear, declare that rather Greece from us these arts derived. Ill imitated, while they loudest sing the vices of their deities and their own in fable, hymn, or song, so personating their gods ridiculous and themselves past shame. Remove their swelling epithets, thick laid as varnish on a harlot's cheek. The rest, thin sown with aught of profit or delight, will far be found unworthy to compare with Zion's songs. To all true tastes excelling, where God is praised aright, and godlike men, the holiest of holies and his saints. Such are from God inspired, not such from thee. Unless where moral virtue is expressed by light of nature, not in all quite lost. Their orators thou then extollest as those the top of eloquence, statists indeed, and lovers of their country as may seem. But herein to our prophets far beneath, as men divinely taught and better teaching the solid rules of civil government in their majestic, unaffected style than all the oratory of Greece and Rome. In them is plainest taught and easiest learnt. What makes a nation happy and keeps it so, what ruins kingdoms and lays cities flat. These only with our law best form a king.
So spake the Son of God. But Satan now, quite at a loss, for all his darts were spent, thus to our Saviour with stern brow replied.
Since neither wealth nor honour, arms nor arts, kingdom nor empire pleases thee, nor aught by me proposed in life contemplative or active, tended on by glory or fame, what dost thou in this world? The wilderness for thee is fittest place. I found thee there, and thither will return thee. Yet remember what I foretell thee. Soon thou shalt have cause to wish thou never had rejected thus nicely or cautiously my offered aid, which would have set thee in short time with ease on David's throne, or throne of all the world. Now, at full age, fullness of time, thy season, when prophecies of thee are best fulfilled. Now, contrary, if I read aught in heaven, or heaven write aught of fate, by what the stars voluminous or single characters in their conjunction met give me to spell. Sorrows and labours, opposition, hate attends thee, scorn, reproaches, injuries, violence and stripes, and lastly cruel death. A kingdom they portend thee, but what kingdom, real or allegoric, I discern not, nor when, eternal sure, as without end, without beginning, for no date prefixed directs me in the starry rubric set.
So saying, he took, for still he knew his power not yet expired, and to the wilderness brought back the Son of God, and left him there, feigning to disappear. Darkness now rose as daylight sunk, and brought in lowering night her shadowy offspring, unsubstantial both, privation mere of light and absent day. Our Saviour, meek and with untroubled mind after his airy jaunt, though hurried sore, hungry and cold betook him to his rest, wherever under some concourse of shades, whose branching arms, thick intertwined, might shield from dews and damps of night his sheltered head. But sheltered slept in vain, for at his head the tempter watched, and soon with ugly dreams disturbed his sleep. And aye the tropic now gan thunder, and both ends of heaven, the clouds from many a horrid rift abortive, poured fierce rain with lightning mixed, water with fire in ruin reconciled. Nor slept the winds within their stony caves, but rushed abroad from the four hinges of the world, and fell on the vexed wilderness, whose tallest pines, though rooted deep as high, and sturdiest oaks, bowed their stiff necks, loaden with stormy blasts, or torn up sheer. Ill wast thou shrouded then, O patient Son of God, yet only stoodst unshaken. Nor yet stayed the terror there. Infernal ghosts and hellish furies round environed thee. Some howled, some yelled, some shrieked, some bent at thee their fiery darts, while thou satst unappalled in calm and sinless peace.
In the 8th episode of Paradise Regained, Robert Glenister was the Son of God, and Ian McDiarmid, Satan. The narrator was Dennis Quilley. Paradise Regained by John Milton, with Dennis Quilley as the poet, Ian McDiarmid as Satan, and Robert Glenister as Christ. The concluding episode, in which Satan carries Christ to the highest pinnacle of the temple.
Thus passed the night so foul, till morning fair came forth with pilgrim steps in hood of grey, who with her radiant finger stilled the roar of thunder, chased the clouds, and laid the winds and grisly spectres which the fiend had raised to tempt the Son of God with terrors dire. And now the sun with more effectual beams had cheered the face of earth, and dried the wet from drooping plant or dropping tree. The birds, who all things now behold more fresh and green after a night of storm so ruinous, cleared up their choicest notes in bush and spray to gratulate the sweet return of morn. Nor yet, amidst this joy and brightest morn, was absent, after all his mischief done, the Prince of Darkness. Glad would also seem of this fair change, and to our Saviour came, yet with no new device, they were all spent. Rather by this his last affront, resolved, desperate of better course, to vent his rage and mad despite, to be so oft repelled. Him walking on a sunny hill he found, backed on the north and west by a thick wood. Out of the wood he starts in wonted shape, and in a careless mood thus to him said,
Fair morning yet betides thee, Son of God. After a dismal night, I heard the rack as earth and sky would mingle, but myself was distant. And these floors, though mortals fear them as dangerous to the pillared frame of heaven, or to the earth's dark basis underneath, are to the main as inconsiderable and harmless, if not wholesome, as a sneeze to man's less universe, and soon are gone. Yet, as being oft times noxious where they light, on man, beast, plant, wasteful and turbulent, like turbulences in the affairs of men, over whose heads they roar and seem to point, they oft foresignify and threaten ill. This tempest at this desert most was bent, of men at thee, for only thou here dwell'st. Did I not tell thee, if thou didst reject the perfect season offered with my aid to win thy destined seat, but wilt prolong all to the push of fate, pursue thy way of gaining David's throne, no man knows when, for both the when and how is nowhere told. Thou shalt be what thou art ordained, no doubt, for angels have proclaimed it, but concealing the time and means. Each act is rightliest done, not when it must, but when it may be best. If thou observe not this, be sure to find what I foretold thee. Many a hard assay of dangers and adversities and pains, ere thou of Israel's sceptre get fast hold. Whereof this ominous night that closed thee round, so many terrors, voices, prodigies, may warn thee as a sure foregoing sign.
So talked he, while the Son of God went on and stayed not, but in brief him answered thus.
Me worse than wet thou find'st not. Other harm, those terrors which thou speak'st of, did me none. I never feared they could, though noising loud and threatening nigh. What they can do as signs betokening or ill-boding, I contemn as false portents, not sent from God but thee, who, knowing I shall reign past thy preventing, obtrudest thy offered aid, that I accepting at least might seem to hold all power of thee, ambitious spirit, and wouldst be thought my God, and storm'st refused, thinking to terrify me to thy will. Desist. Thou art discerned and toil'st in vain, nor me in vain molest.
Then hear, O Son of David, virgin born, for Son of God to me is yet in doubt. Of the Messiah I have heard foretold by all the prophets, of thy birth at length announced by Gabriel with the first I knew, and of the angelic song in Bethlehem field on thy birth-night that sung thee Saviour born. From that time seldom have I ceased to eye thy infancy, thy childhood, and thy youth, thy manhood last, though yet in private bred, till at the ford of Jordan, whither all flocked to the Baptist, I among the rest, though not to be baptized, by voice from heaven heard thee pronounced, the Son of God beloved. Thenceforth I thought thee worth my nearer view and narrower scrutiny, that I might learn in what degree or meaning thou art called the Son of God, which bears no single sense. The Son of God I also am, or was, and if I was, I am. Relation stands. All men are sons of God. Yet thee I thought in some respect far higher so declared. Therefore I watched thy footsteps from that hour, and followed thee still unto this waste wild, where by all best conjectures I collect thou art to be my fatal enemy. Good reason, then, if I beforehand seek to understand my adversary, who and what he is, his wisdom, power, intent, by parle or composition, truce or league, to win him, or win from him what I can. And opportunity I here have had to try thee, sift thee, and confess have found thee proof against all temptation as a rock of adamant, and as a centre firm to the utmost of mere man, both wise and good. Not more, for honours, riches, kingdoms, glory, have been before contemned, and may again. Therefore to know what more thou art than man, worth naming Son of God by voice from heaven, another method I must now begin.
So saying, he caught him up, and without wing of hippogriff bore through the air sublime over the wilderness and o'er the plain, till underneath them fair Jerusalem, the holy city, lifted high her towers, and higher yet the glorious temple reared her pile, far off appearing like a mount of alabaster topped with golden spires. There on the highest pinnacle he set the Son of God, and added thus in scorn,
There stand, if thou wilt stand. To stand upright will ask thee skill. I to thy father's house hath brought thee, and highest placed, highest is best. Now show thy progeny. If not to stand, cast thyself down, safely, if Son of God. For it is written, he will give command concerning thee to his angels. In their hands they shall uplift thee, lest at any time thou chance to dash thy foot against a stone.
Also it is written, tempt not the Lord thy God.
He said, and stood. But Satan, smitten with amazement, fell, as when earth's son Antaeus, to compare small things with greatest, in Irasa strove with Jove's Alcides, and oft foiled, still rose, receiving from his mother earth new strength, fresh from his fall, and fiercer grapple joined, throttled at length in the air, expired and fell. So, after many a foil, the tempter proud, renewing fresh assaults, amidst his pride, fell whence he stood to see his victor fall. And as that Theban monster that proposed her riddle, and him who solved it not devoured, that once found out and solved, for grief and spite cast herself headlong from the Ismenian steep, so, struck with dread and anguish, fell the fiend. And to his crew that sat consulting brought joyless triumphals of his hoped success, ruin and desperation and dismay, who durst so proudly tempt the Son of God. So Satan fell, and straight a fiery globe of angels on full sail of wing flew nigh, who on their plumy wings took Jesus up from his uneasy station, and upbore as on a floating couch through the blithe air, then in a flowery valley set him down on a green bank, and set before him spread a table of celestial food, divine, ambrosial, fruits fetched from the tree of life, and from the fount of life ambrosial drink, that soon refreshed him wearied, and repaired what hunger, if aught hunger had impaired, or thirst. And as he fed, angelic choirs sung heavenly anthems of his victory over temptation and the tempter proud.
True image of the Father, whether throned in the bosom of bliss and light of light conceiving,
or remote from heaven, enshrined in fleshly tabernacle and human form,
wandering the wilderness, whatever place, habit, or state, or motion, still expressing the Son of God,
with godlike force endued, against thee a tempter of thy father's throne and thief of paradise.
Him long of old thou didst debel, and down from heaven cast with all his army. Now thou hast avenged supplanted Adam, and by vanquishing temptation hast regained lost paradise, and frustrated the conquest fraudulent.
He never more henceforth will dare set foot in paradise to tempt. His snares are broke, for though that seat of earthly bliss be failed, a fairer paradise is founded now for Adam and his chosen sons, whom thou, a saviour, art come down to reinstall.
Where they shall dwell secure, when time shall be of tempter and temptation without fear. But thou, infernal serpent, shalt not long rule in the clouds. Hereafter learn with awe to dread the Son of God. He all unarmed shall chase thee with the terror of his voice from thy demoniac holds, possession foul. Thee and thy legions, yelling they shall fly, and beg to hide them in a herd of swine, lest he command them down into the deep bound, and to torment sent before their time. Hail, Son of the Most High, heir of both worlds, queller of Satan, on thy glorious work now enter, and begin to save mankind.
Thus they, the Son of God, our Saviour meek, sung victor, and from heavenly feast refreshed, brought on his way with joy. He, unobserved, home to his mother's house, private returned.
In the final episode of John Milton's Paradise Regained, Dennis Quilly was the narrator, Robert Glenister, the Son of God, and Ian McDermid, Satan. Matthew Morgan and David Thorpe were the angels. John Milton's poem was abridged by Adrian Mitchell, with music by Elizabeth Parker of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. The production assistant was Katrina Wade. Paradise Regained was directed by John Theocaris.
Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program.